Next up from ETSU, please welcome to the stage Steve Forbes.
I got to apologize before I get started. I know everybody came here to see the real Steve Forbes, and I don't know anything about the flat tax, and I'm tired of getting blamed for it. And so I apologize that I'm not who they said I was. I've checked into airlines before, and they've asked me, "Oh, are you Steve Forbes?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here to buy Delta." You know, I'm not flying private today. You know, and so I apologize. I want to thank the Eastman Corporation and IDEAcademy for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I get the opportunity to speak a lot about basketball. I'm very fortunate that I travel all over the country to speak at clinics about the game, about plays, about offense, defense, you know, my experience over the past 29 years. But it's very rare that I get the opportunity to talk about what I think is probably the most important aspect of what I do, and that's the transformation of my players. Basically, getting them to do things they didn't know they could do or want to do in order to get the things they want. I'll say that again. That's what coaching really is, in my opinion, is getting people or players to do what they didn't think they could do or really want to do in order to get the things that they want. And so I feel like that's probably my biggest strength as a coach, is to do those things. X's and O's and all those things are important, but really getting people to do, you know, to overachieve, to change, to come together as a team, that's probably the most important thing that I do as a coach. Obviously, transformation is not easy. It's not something that people want to do. It's really easy to stay in your comfort zone, and I'm going to talk about that as we go forward here, as I'm pretty good about getting my players outside their comfort zone, and that's really what I'm trying to do. It's scary because, you know, when you transform, you really don't know what the future holds. And to really transform, you have to fail. You have to go through trial and error. You have to go through success and failures. And a lot of people, you know, they really don't want to put themselves out there like that. There's not a lot of difference between unsuccessful and successful people, in my opinion. Really, that successful and unsuccessful people have pretty much the same ability. It really comes down to how bad, you know, you want to change. How bad do you want to reach your potential? How much discipline do you have to change? And those are some of the things I'm going to talk about. Now, one of my favorite shows when I was growing up was Letterman. Remember when Letterman always do that? Okay, that's what I'm going to do today, okay? I'm just going to throw my cards. All right? Coaching. What is coaching? And I've kind of hit on it. I had to look it up. I actually, on Wikipedia, because I know that's a very, it's a really safe site to use because they're always right? But you go back to Oxford University, 1830. That's when they first used the word coach, and that was to help a student carry themselves through an exam, which I needed a lot of that when I was in college, but I didn't go to Oxford. But really, truthfully, what a coach does is it's the process used to transform people from where they're at to where they want to be. Where they're at to where they want to be. And that's going to take a lot of vision. You know, the hardest thing for me to do, and I've already touched on it, and I'm going to tell you now how I do it, is, again, everybody has hopes and dreams, but they don't know how to get there. And my job is to help get them there. And to do that, it's a tough process. And most often, to do those things, you really don't want to go through what you have to go through to do it. And my job is to get them to do it. So right at the beginning of the year, we have what we call building blocks to success. This is our first meeting. Before we can get into coaching them and how I tell you how we get that done, we've got to lay a plan out for them how this is going to happen. And the first thing is you got to have vision. And my vision is three things for my players. And this is the only thing I promise when I recruit them. And I know that's not a car, it's not a house, it's not money. It's number one, you're going to graduate. Okay, you're going to graduate. And we have graduated since I've been here, 15 out of 15 seniors, and I think that's a really good thing. Yeah. On top of winning all the games, I keep a flat basketball in my office. And the reason why I keep a flat basketball in my office is because someday that ball is going to quit bouncing. And they've got to have something to go to when that's done. So I tell them, use basketball, don't let it use you. It gives you a great opportunity for an education, so use it. And so we were really, that's one of the number one thing for me is that. The second thing is, as far as vision, is they're going to improve as a player and they're going to improve as a person. And that's something that I'll talk about here more in a little bit. The third thing is we're going to win. We're going to win. That's what I promise. So that's the vision, okay? The next thing is our core values, okay? Our core values, the fundamental beliefs that dictate our program's behavior. Okay, my great-grandmother's name was Grace. She had 156 grandkids when she passed away. That's right, 156. I come from a big family. I only graduated with 32 people. In Lone Tree, Iowa, we have more than one tree, but we only have one stop sign, okay? Grace. The acronym for GRACE for me, and this is our core values, and if you ask our players, and when you see them, ask them, what is GRACE? The first thing is you got to be grateful. My players are going to be grateful for the opportunity that they are given. Okay, they're going to be grateful to the community that has given them that opportunity, and we're going to give back. And one of the things that I think we're really good at is being out in the community and giving back. It's very important to be grateful. It's very important to be respectful. Okay, you got to respect yourself, but you also got to respect others that you come in contact with. So our players are grateful and they're respectful. And if they're not, they're going to have a hard time playing for me and a hard time being in our program. The third thing, the A, is accountability. You got to be accountable for your actions. You got to look in the mirror. And you cannot play the blame game with me. And we'll talk about the blame game here in a minute because I'm a big believer in beating the blame game. Okay? So that's the A. What is the C? Oh, C, committed. You got to be committed. You got to have both feet in. You got to have both feet in. You can't have one in and one out. I learned a lot throughout my career. I've been with a lot of Hall of Fame coaches, but I've learned a lot from the women's coaches that I've coached with. Pat Summitt, I spent 5 years with her. And the one thing I always loved when practice started with Pat, they all circled up. You know, there's a circle on the court. And everybody got around the circle and looked each other in the eye, and she spoke to them before they started practice. And I do the same thing. But I cannot stand somebody that doesn't want to have both feet in the circle. They want to stand back here. That's a little thing, but I want everybody with both feet in, looking me square in the eye, getting ready to go to practice. And so they got to be committed. They got to be committed. And the last thing is they got to be enthusiastic about what they're doing. Okay? I don't have a master's degree, but I do have a master's in body language. And I can't stand bad body language. And so for me, life is about my glass being half full, not half empty. All right? It's about being an energy giver and not an energy taker. Okay? And these are the things that we talk about with our players long before we talk about what offense we're running, what defense we're running, what drills we're going to do. They've got to understand what our core values are. Then they got to understand what our culture is. And our culture is pretty simple. We have high expectations. We have very high expectations, and I'm going to hold them to a very, very high standard. And so they've got to understand that their behavior on and off the court has to match the expectations not only they have for themselves, but for our team. Okay? They've got to understand that their behavior on and off the court has to match the expectations we have not only for ourselves, but for our team, and that's our culture. All right? They have to have an identity. They have to know who they are. Now, this is a basketball thing. I don't want to bore you with it. But I believe there's a lot of teams, there's a lot of companies probably out there, they really don't know who they are. And I've played against a lot of teams in my career where when we got done playing them, I'd ask Coach, what did they stand for tonight? What were they trying to accomplish? I know this. You can come watch us play. You might not know what we're doing. Half the time I don't know what we're doing, okay? But I know this. I know we're going to play hard, we're going to play smart, and we're going to play together. Now, sometimes we don't get that smart down very well, but we're going to play hard and together, okay? We are going to share the basketball, share it. We're going to be tough, physical, and hard-minded defensively. We're going to grab every 50-50 ball with two hands. We're going to run for our teammates. We're going to value the ball, and the most important thing is we're going to do what we're supposed to do when we're supposed to do it. Now, that has nothing to do with X's and O's, and that's the only thing I write on the board before every game. You think that's rocket science in there, and I'm coming up with all these big-time speeches. No, I'm not. We are who we are. This is our identity, and I believe in that. And so no matter what happens in the game, we can always stick to our identity. Whatever happens in practice, we are our identity. And if you see our players, please ask them. And then we have standards. You know, and those are just, we have program standards and we have individual standards. And those are things that they know that they're expected to do on a daily basis. So the building blocks for success are vision, core values, culture, identity, and standards. All right, and this is before we even get on the court. All right, I'm having fun doing that. All right, how do I help my players transform? How does that happen? Okay, number one, I'm very demanding. Okay, extremely demanding. It's me versus them every day in practice. I create chaos. Okay, I create mental and physical stress. And the reason why I do that is so when the games come, it's easy. And so I don't want to wait till game night to know who I can and cannot count on. So I create this atmosphere in practice on purpose. It takes us some time to figure it out, but sooner or later they figure it out. But what it does, it causes them to come together as a team. Because if they don't, they're not going to make it through the adversity that I create. So I think it's very important that you have to be very, very demanding when it comes to transformation, okay? Because every day we're either getting better or we're getting worse, right? I mean, I've been through these things. I've been 29 years of coaching. I went through a year before I came here. We won 35 games in a row at Wichita State and set an NCAA record. You know, you say, well, that must have been a lot of fun. No, it was extremely stressful because winning and success sometimes creates a false sense of security. And maybe things aren't going that great, but you're just winning enough to win. And so we had to create adversity in our practices. We had to be demanding in our practices because sometimes they weren't getting it on game night. And that's a hard thing to do. I think it's really important to be truthful, okay? But the truth hurts. The truth's going to hurt. And my players, I promise you 90% of the time they don't like what they hear from me. But I am going to be truthful. I'm not going to tell them what they want to hear. I am not an enabler, okay? I am not their friend. I'm their coach and their mentor. So I think it's really, really important to tell the truth because here's the deal. I see more in them than they see in themselves. I see more in them than they'll ever see in themselves. And if you follow us, we had a player that just graduated to Santa Bradford. And when I got him as a sophomore, he was young, just a kind of a quiet kid from, you know, a country school in West Tennessee. You know, and he just didn't really he liked being comfortable. He didn't like getting outside his comfort zone. And for the next 3 years, I forced him outside of his comfort zone. And we had a love-hate relationship. I'm sure if you asked him today, and he's playing professionally, he'd probably say he loves me, but deep down inside, he probably doesn't. Okay, but that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I'm okay with that. Because he went from being a non-starter to being the player of the year in our league and an honorable mention All-American. Okay, but if I would have allowed him to do the things that he wanted to do, the way he wanted to do it, it wouldn't have worked. He wouldn't have got there. And so I think it's really important that you are very, very truthful when it comes to transformation or change. If you're in charge of that, be very, very honest. Most people, you know, they just want to hear what they want to hear. I'm not big into that, you know, and it gets uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable way to coach, but I think it's the only way to do it. I want my players to be fearless and not fearful. So what goes hand in hand with that is I want them to know it's okay to fail. If you're going to really put yourself out there and try to be special and do something that you're not comfortable doing, then you're going to fail. But that's how we learn. We learn from our mistakes. And so I try to make our players fail in practice. I want them to fail so they understand that it's okay as long as they learn from their mistakes. And that's just life. Because if you can do that, you can do that in life. Last year, the watershed moment for me, for our team, was a loss. We lost probably the most painful game I've ever been a part of. We were up 22 points in the second half at Xavier. They're the 5th-ranked team in the country. I mean, we're whipping their ass, okay? We're giving it to them, all right? And then the clock just seemed to not run anymore. It just kind of stopped. And they kept scoring and scoring and scoring, okay? And so I couldn't help them. I did a bad job. And I felt terrible after the game, terrible. I felt like I'd done a crappy job. But the reality of it was they were a resilient group. I didn't know it. We had to drive to Detroit in a bus the next day, get ready to play Detroit, had practice, and I was really worried how we were going to be mentally. I came in, and I was down. I'm usually pretty good about bouncing back, and they were just popping and playing and practicing. And we won 16 games in a row after that. We lost on December 5th and didn't lose till almost February 1st. But they were a resilient group. They learned that, they didn't panic when they failed. And I like to think that that comes back to the way we coach our players. I think it's important to teach. I think it's important to correct. I think it's important to discipline your players or your people in your organization. Teach, correct, and discipline. I don't tell people just do it because I say do it. I tell them why, and I tell them how, so they can become better. It's really important. I talk a lot about the blame game. I'm real big into our guys not playing the blame game, not pointing fingers. It's an easy thing to do. Okay, be responsible for who you are. And I use myself as an example. 8 years ago, I got fired at Tennessee. I could have got bitter or I could get better. I chose to get better. I learned from my mistakes, what they were, minimal as they may have been, but I moved on. Okay? Did I say that? Oh, that was a slip. But you can't play the blame game. The blame game is the most important game on my schedule. It's not Wofford. It's not Greensboro. It's the blame game. You got to beat it to be successful, okay? I want my players to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. I want them to go in the room and raise the temperature, not measure it. Raise the temperature when you walk in the room. Don't measure it, okay? They got to understand they control their own happiness. I don't. They control their own happiness when they come in that gym every day. I don't. They control it. They got to understand the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. The road to success is always under construction, and only in the dictionary does success come before work. Those are some of the things I use with my players, on a daily basis, and their attitude will determine their altitude. All right? Whew, that was fun. A couple more things. I'm running out of time, right? Well, I think she went over before me, though. So I get a little extra? Start the band playing, okay. You gotta love your players. I love my players. They will not, nobody's gonna transform, nobody's gonna change unless you love them and you care about them in a genuine manner, okay? And that takes time to build that relationship. I don't just see my players at practice. I have a rule. Every player has to check in my office every day before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they gotta come have a conversation with me and not about basketball. Okay, and I think that's where we start to build genuine relationship. I make fun of their jeans and their hair, and I don't know what skinny jeans are. I can't stand those things. But I think it's important, and I have them over to my house because they're not going to change unless they think I care about them. And let me tell you a watershed moment for me just a couple weeks ago. I couldn't go to practice. I had a doctor's appointment, and normally I don't miss practice, but I was in the office, and they knew I was there. So as soon as the practice was over, I got about 5 text messages. Coach, are you okay? What's wrong? Why aren't you at practice? And that's when I knew they knew I cared about them because now they care about me. It wasn't like, damn, I'm glad he's gone, which I wouldn't have blamed them. I got a lot of neat things here to say, but I guess I'll wrap it up. You got 2 choices in life when you wake up. 2 choices if you're going to change. You're going to wake up one day or every day, and you're going to have something you're supposed to do, but you really don't want to do it, right? Like when I go to Dunkin' Donuts, I want my coffee, but I really want to eat that jelly too, right? Are you going to make yourself do it? Are you going to make yourself do it? When you wake up and there's something you're supposed to do, but you really don't want to do it, are you going to go to the gym and get extra shots up at midnight? Are you going to make yourself do it? Okay, then you'll change. Or you'll wake up and you're going to find that there's something that you're not supposed to do, and that's that jelly donut. And are you going to make yourself not do it? Are you going to do it? That's change. I have a history degree. I use it a lot with my players. And I think it was Tolstoy that once said that, what did he say? I got to read it. No. Everyone thinks about changing the world. Okay? Everyone thinks about changing the world, but no one really thinks of changing themselves. Everyone thinks about changing the world, but they really don't think about changing themselves. Think about it. If we change ourselves, we'll probably have a much better world to live in. Thanks a lot for listening to me.